Well, I think a lot of feminist activists would say that they were feminists before they knew the word, you know. And so I think that I was fighting my own battles for equality as a woman before I even ever knew of the feminist movement. The strange thing with me is that when I heard the word feminist movement, it resonated with my maiden name, which is Femin, feminist. I thought, oh, that's my movement. But it also defined everything I'd been, you know, struggling for before I ever knew such a thing existed. But just at the time that I was having my worst struggles, which was when I was first married, I suddenly fell into the inequality right blatantly in front of my eyes. Actually, the movement was born at that moment. It was just burgeoning at that moment, and I actually needed to get my actual career. I had a PhD and I needed to get a job. And Douglas College of Rutgers University was one of the most important feminist programs going in the country, and it was just being born. And they were looking for somebody to teach a course on women and art. And I lived in Manhattan. I didn't have any job. I needed one desperately. I had 2 children and everything. And I was interviewed, and they were sort of asking me what I could do that would be special for that course. I said I could take the students into New York, take them to the galleries, and they could meet the artists. And then we also had art shows going on at Douglas College in the library. A person named Lynn Miller, who was very well known in those days, she started a kind of gallery in the library. And she had all those artists come and have parties when they had their show at the library. So there was an interconnectedness already. So I did begin then to bring my students into the city. And, you know, we did go to the galleries, and one day we saw that Simone de Beauvoir's sister was having a show. And so we went to visit her. And she wasn't there, and then she was coming back, and she wasn't there again, so I called her up and spoke to her in French at her hotel, and she said, come and visit me. I'm so impressed that you're teaching my sister's work. I'm so happy. And I went and met her, and she invited me to visit her in France if I go to France, which I did. We became good friends. She came back to America. I went to France, and, you know, I've written about her, and it was really amazing. So then I started inviting all these artists to come out to my class, because it was just a bus ride away, so it was just fine. And it was a very popular class. So they decided they better keep me on. And then that expanded, and, you know, for various years. First, I would say that I studied Surrealism in graduate school, and I wrote my dissertation on Surrealism. And Andre Breton, who sort of set the model for what is Surrealism, always wrote about artists, even though he was a poet and a literary personality. And so there was never a division in Surrealism. Oh, there was in academia in Surrealism between art and literature, but in Surrealism itself, the artists and the writers collaborated all the time, and I had this idea that we should collaborate. It wasn't like that in the art world in those days. So when I did a salon, which I did, I founded a salon in New York with all my friends, and I founded it for feminist writers because I felt like a fraud. Truly, I felt like, how could I teach about literature if I've never met a living writer? That's the way it was in those days. We didn't have Barnes & Noble with writers launching their books, and, you know, we didn't have that. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if, like the women of the 18th century, we could have a salon where people would come and meet the writers, and they would all, you know, meld and mix and get to know each other, and especially the feminist writers who were writing new kinds of work, and no one had ever heard of them before. I thought, well, their future generations should be reading them and get to meet them in person. And so I started the salon with my friends, and I gave a salon. I gave many salons on literature, and then I had also many artist friends, and I knew that they also needed a salon. So one time I made a salon that was about art, and the strange thing was that the women of the literature people who came to the salon were furious, because, you know, art is a wild thing. So these women, one was rocking in a chair and she was projecting her letters at random up on, you know, it was kind of like a salon of art that would relate to literature in some way. So she had letters flying around on different screens, and my friend said, if you think that this is what we want at our salon, you're wrong, because this is not literature, this is just nothing. And it wasn't nothing, it was just, you know, very, very modern art. And so there were other occasions. One time there was a bus that went around from a conference to different art spaces in New York, And we decided we would be an art space. And then we would put on a literary program. So people came off the bus, they sat down on the floor in this salon space that we had in somebody's loft, and we were going to give them a reading, but they were just walking around checking the walls, and then they all walked out. We said, wait, we haven't even begun yet. And they said, well, we've checked the walls, we've checked it right out. And we said, but we have a program for you. So we read to them. People read poetry, you know, short stories, and they burst into tears, and they said, we had forgotten about the power of words. You know, and they realized that they said, all we ever do is go into a space and check out the walls, and then we walk out. You know, and we said, but you have to get involved in it. So it was a way in which I understood that the arts were all separated, and I tried to found another salon in which I would relate the different arts. So we had a salon in a gallery space. It had art on the walls, and then we had literature, we had performances, we had music sometimes, and dance. One day I was at a reading by women poets, and suddenly I thought, oh, look at all these people here, we could have a salon. I stood up and I said, who would like to start a salon? And everyone said, oh, I came to New York from the Middle West because I was looking for a salon, and I came here and I wanted to start a salon, and there are no salons here in New York. I said, well, we're going to make our own. And we got together, 4 or 5 people, and we shared our address lists. And we set the first one in my apartment in New York, which was too small for all the people who came. Tons of them came. They were flooding down the hall everywhere. And we would have had to have 2 sessions even. And I gave a little slide lecture on the women of surrealism, and that was the first event. And then we decided we need a bigger space, and we need, you know, to go on. And so we started having one a month, and we would choose different writers, and we would have them in different art galleries and art spaces because they were large lofts. And then some of us, like me, realized we should have some art too. So we had sometimes invited artists to salons. When I was in France one year, I met a real salon woman. Her name was Madame Tezenas, and I spoke to her in French, and I asked her the big question. I said, what was the social goal of your salon? Because I was doing research on salons, and I was thinking that my social goal was networking, that I would have the artists meet the critics, meet the journalists, meet the PR people, you know, and they'd get their work out in the world. And I said to her, what was the social goal of your salon? She said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, you know, I explained, like networking, making people be in contact with each other, and she said, oh my good heavens, dear, I don't think we had a social goal. We never wanted a social goal. We wouldn't want any product to come out of our salon, and we wouldn't ever want to have anything like what you're describing. Would you like to know why we had salons? She said. So I thought I knew, but I guess I didn't. So I said, sure. So she said, because we loved les agréments de la vie. That means the pleasures of life. She said, we loved good wine, good friendships, good food. We loved good conversation. We loved good art, good literature, and we loved to play games and have fun. She said, the agrément de la vie. We loved to have fun and enjoy life. And I just burst into tears myself. And I said, I never thought of that, enjoying anything. I was enjoying it, but mostly I was doing it to promote women writers, you know. So then I came back and I told everybody, we have to have some fun. I started teaching at Douglas College. It turns out that the people who hired me had just founded their department, and when they went to the dean to say they wanted to found women's studies, they were asked by a committee of people, like, what are your great treatises? And there was just Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. And over that time, there are bookstores and libraries filled with things about women in every field. There's women's studies at over 200 universities in the United States. You know, so I am very impressed. I'm not saying it's all been done, because you can't just turn over every single value in the world in 30 years, but definitely I'm impressed with the fact that in a way we won. We did win. Yeah. People told us, you'll never be able to fight off patriarchy, thousands and thousands of years of these terrible, you know, violent practices. You'll never be able to oppose it, and we were. I mean, to a certain degree, we've made a real impact.